Technology drives our modern world, and it seems like it evolves with leaps and bounds every year. And it can be a lot to keep up with, even when it comes to something as simple as upgrading your cell phone, right?
One evolution in technology is artificial intelligence, or AI. We've all heard people talking more and more about it lately.
But what exactly is it capable of? Well, for more information on the matter, we've brought in the Vice President of Draper Digital Media. This is our very own Ethan Holland. Thank you so much for coming in. And I know this is not easy to just like break down, but we're going to try. We're going to try. So tell me about, this is a topic you're really interested in, isn't it?
It is. It came out for lay people. I consider everyone's a lay person in AI unless you work at an AI company. So for people like us in the public, earlier this fall is when ChatGPT came out. And I think it was one of the first examples of where each of us could tinker and see how it worked and log on and ask it a question. And that kind of like the internet, where each of us has our own unique perspective or a unique experience. I found it to be that type of spark where I thought, wow, this may be very interesting. And ever since then, I've been spending my evenings watching essentially YouTube videos and explainers, and I've kind of gotten addicted to it. So yes, I love it, and it's a pretty compelling topic.
So what kinds of AI are people using now?
Well, that's a tough question, because I think there's a lot of AI that we don't even know we use, like autocomplete on your phone. So if I said, I need to go home and feed the DO and it says G, in a way, that's kind of AI already. Okay. I think there's a lot of AI that's all around us that we just consider functionality. What I think we're focusing on now when we talk about AI is things that are emerging, that are new. And I think for most people, that would be ChatGPT, which is that language AI where you can talk to it and have it do party tricks, write poetry. I think that's what most people right now are thinking when they think of what's going on in AI.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about some of the practical uses of these AI engines such as ChatGPT.
Sure, well, I think ChatGPT is essentially, if I go back to that autocomplete with the DOG, ChatGPT is very good at predicting text. So for you and me, I think the party trick of filling in the last letter of dog is not that exciting. But for a computer, it can take what if dog is a 3-letter word, it can take paragraphs and respond with a paragraph just as easily as it would adding the G in the word dog. So I could say, write a poem about Salisbury, Maryland, and then it can autofill. The last word of that long string would be a poem about Salisbury, Maryland. So that kind of trick is really interesting. But the way it becomes practical, I think, is for, I've seen a lot of people use it for brainstorming. So I know a person who wanted to ask her mother to quit smoking and didn't know how to approach it, and said, could you write a variety of notes to my mom, politely asking her to try to quit smoking. And it was a way for this person to kind of spitball ideas. And so that's how I see it primarily being the most useful, is as a tool for just taking a moment to think of things that you would find challenging with language and letting this thing take a stab at it and giving you ideas.
What do you think are some misconceptions about artificial intelligence?
I think the first thing I would say is there's short-term, mid-term, and long-term, right? And I think that short-term is where we all are. Other people who work in the industry are looking long-term. And because of that, the misconceptions would be you hear some leaders talking about what they're considering the future and dangers of AI, and then maybe you see us just playing with its current state thinking, I'm not that impressed, right? So I think the question is, what are the dangers of it?
Yeah.
Short term, I would say the ability to create a lot of content very easily, to me, seems like a danger. Because if at its basics, if you Google something nowadays, you often find a page that's been written for Google that's just full of kind of word salad because they're trying to get Google to see it.
Right.
I think pages like that just fill the internet with filler are going to be a lot easier to create. And I think misinformation and all the usual suspects that we're used to in normal days are just going to get worse with AI days.
Interesting. All right. Well, we've got more we want to discuss with you about artificial intelligence, but we're going to take a little break and then come back and continue that discussion. Stick around. More DelmarvaLife is on the way.
Artificial intelligence is capable of some pretty incredible feats. It can write intricate stories, generate realistic images, a whole bunch more than that actually. But how does AI actually work?
Well, the answer can easily boggle anyone's mind, so we brought in someone who spent plenty of time with this tech. We are back with the Vice President of Draper Digital Media. This is Ethan Holland. Welcome back. And we were talking about, artificial intelligence and the different kinds, but how exactly does it work? I mean, you gave the example of autocorrect, but can we dig a little deeper?
Sure. So for the sake of the show, I think there's two types of AI that people are talking about. One is the text type of AI, which is called a language model, and another type is images. So I don't know if you've seen some of the AI images floating around. I'm going to assume most people have. There was one that got famous. It was the Pope wearing a puffy Prada jacket. Looked like he was in a movie or something. Mm-hmm. And that was very photorealistic, but it was an AI-generated image. Other stuff would be these language models like ChatGPT. So let's start with ChatGPT. I'm going to really pull this down to what I'm considering layman's terms. So if anyone's technical out there, bear with my creative license. Essentially what they do is to train a language model, you give it as much language as possible so that it can learn and be able to predict. So going back to the string completion of autocomplete, DOG, the last letter is dog. If you give this thing the entire internet, it's pretty good at guessing what comes next, given all the text that it's ever digested. So instead of auto-completing a word, and it can do a whole sentence, you could put an entire paragraph, books. Now I think a small book, I want to say 35,000 words it could handle. So you could pretty much load a book in and then talk to it about the book, and it would be able to predict and answer you. But the way it works that I find very fascinating is that, to my knowledge, it does not have a database. It's more like the way you and I work, which is as we move around, we're picking up things, and then we can repeat them back. But it's not always perfect, and we don't necessarily have the option to look it up in a dictionary or see a picture and tell you about it photographically. So the idea that these AIs are able to talk to you very convincingly by basically riffing on how they built a structure that they were just trained on, and they built a little network. Their network is a lot smaller than the body of work they were trained on. So they could be trained on terabytes of information, but only be megabytes big. The model's very small. Just like our brain, the neurons are limited, but we see a lot more stuff than we can handle, but we're able to regurgitate it. So that to me is a little mystifying, and it's very interesting, but it does create a limitation because they don't have the ability to look stuff up. So I think one of the criticisms you'll often see is that it made up an answer. Well, that's because sometimes, just like we would have something wrong. They call it hallucinating in the AI world. The next phase of AI, I think, will be very fun when AIs are able to look stuff up. So if we think of it now as a chit-chat bot, like a cocktail party guest that's just really good, a dilettante who can talk about every topic, we tend to give it too much credit. And then we tend to heckle it, like, oh, you really don't know how to program, or you really don't know how to write a poem. But the next phase, and that I think is going to happen, is where this, what I call the chit-chat bot at the cocktail party, suddenly does have the ability to look things up. So if you ask it a medical question, it can actually pull up the medical answer. Yeah. Or if you want it to write code, it can look at the code library. And I think that will be a big step forward. So the way they work now is it's basically just a text prediction engine, and then I think in the future it will be able to interface. I can tell you a little bit about how the image works. So AI imagery is, this is a good challenge for me to try to explain it in quick terms. Essentially, they train a computer to be able to recognize a lot of photographs. So if I gave you 1 million photos, like flashcards, Jimmy, and I said, okay, this is a cat, this is a dog, this is a giraffe, and eventually you get them all, then I start to kind of mess with you. So I take 10% of the giraffe and I speckle it up so it's blurry. What's this? And you say it's a giraffe again. And now you're pretty good at getting these 10% blurred animals. Then I make it 20%. Then I make it 30%, then 40, and now it's getting tough because you're like, I'm trying to get what this animal is, but it's very blurry. But a computer, it doesn't give up, and you keep training it, and it's able to what's called denoise, let's say the giraffe, back into the giraffe. Now, this is the part to me that's very creative on the human's part. Someone said eventually, once the computer was very good at this, what if we just give it 100% noise and say, what if this was a giraffe? What would that giraffe have looked like? So the computer takes the random noise and you've basically forced it to turn it into a giraffe. And that is how these images are genuinely new, because you're giving them random imagery. And then you combine it. I could say, give me 2 show hosts on a kayak, or wearing cowboy hats. And then it just does it out of this random noise, and it says, well, if this was what was in the photo, this is what they would have looked like.
So we're going to get into that age where it's don't believe everything you see.
I think we're there already.
We're there already. All right. Wow. I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this. What has been something that you've done with AI that surprised you?
I think I found a practical use for AI that was surprising, that I actually used it for a reason. I think as a party trick, that's what most people are using it for. I had a very complicated email exchange, because I do work with technology, and it was probably 10 different responses with a lot of moving parts. And I was tired. It was a Friday, and I was thinking, man, I don't know if I have the energy to parse this long email chain. So I threw it into ChatGPT as a test, and I said, would you be able to just distill this down to 3 or 4 bullet points of what these people are talking about and kind of write a polite, patient reply that guides it in this direction? And it did it for me. And it took this 10 email exchange that was very complicated, and I double checked its work. But just that grunt work of slogging through the details and summarizing it for me, I felt was very nice. And also, being tired, the computer never gets tired. So if you have a topic or something you want to run by it, it's always eager to help, and it never gets tired. So I think that would be my example, is helping me parse a very long work email and digest it.
Ethan, thank you so much. Very fascinating. I'm sure we could talk about it for all week.
And that's the truth.
But you gave us a little taste.
I'd love to come back. We can talk more.
We'll do it
Let's
again.
do that.